Buyers are very particular about, hey, I'm willing to pay a premium, but this house has to be move-in ready.
Perfect.
I have to be emotional about when I see this house, like this is my home and I'm willing to pay for it. So we as flippers have to think of, if I were a buyer in this area, what's going to get people really excited and the value of my property.
You're listening to the AZREIA Show. If you're looking for quality real estate investing information that you can trust, you've found it. Stay tuned and join the tens of thousands of members that have already benefited from AZREIA, your home for education, market information, support, and networking opportunities that will advance your real estate investing career.
Hello, welcome to another episode of the AZREIA Show. It's Marcus Maloney and our Executive Director, Mike Del Preet of AZREIA. How are you, Mike?
Great. Are we recording, Marcus?
Yes, we are recording.
Right, just making sure. Hello, everybody. How's it going? I didn't see it on there, so just double checking.
Remember, Mike, is new software. So, as you guys can see, we love to have fun here in the studio, and we are here with Tracy Royce on today, and we love being in Tracy's presence because she talks a lot about fix and flipping, and she's one of our subgroup leaders here, and she works directly with AZREIA. So we're going to be talking with her. She's going to share some content about our events that's going to be coming up, but before that, we're just going to talk about fix and flipping. So if that's okay with you guys, we're just going to sit back and we're just going to have a candid conversation with Tracy.
I love it. Thank you for having me again. I'm so excited to be here.
Excellent. So, Tracy, just real quick, give us a snippet of your background for those who didn't listen to your prior episode.
Absolutely. So I got my start in the business working behind the scenes for other investors for a long time. And before then, I actually worked as a loan officer. So I include that in the time period where I was behind the scenes doing administrative and as a loan officer, and got recruited for one of my old landlords that he knew I had worked in the finance portion of real estate, and said, hey, he happened to have a couple dozen homes. Cool. And he's like, I trust you. I know you. Listen, I have a full-time job, but I could really use a helping hand. So that started me essentially outsourcing my administrative skills to help investors. Did that for about a decade for bigger and bigger investors, and finally decided, if I can help make these guys millionaires, maybe I should do some of this myself. True. So I did branch off. I had to learn the construction end of it, but being back of house for a long time and now being front of house has given me a really good breadth of understanding of everything that goes into a little from A to Z. Okay.
So tell us, you've been fixing and flipping for years, and now we know that the market has shifted. What is happening with fix and flips here in Phoenix now?
So most of the time, real estate tends to move really slowly. We say it's like the grandpa of asset classes. Whereas what we saw in, Q2 of last year, it seems like things really hit a wall once the Federal Reserve started to increase the federal funds rate. So come May, you could feel things change within a period of weeks. So since then, a lot of flippers got caught when their numbers didn't make sense, and we're still seeing some of the overflow of what that looks like. But we also saw a lot of investors pull back, because I can attest to the fact it became harder to know what the value of the properties were going to be a few months down the road. Yeah. So, the statistics that AZREIA shares every month are so helpful, because it gives us a pulse on what's happening real time and not just splashy headlines. But we saw it bear out to where investors were saying, listen, I'm just going to sit on the sidelines for a little bit just to see where this all lands. Because in as much as we want to be gung-ho and maybe take advantage of things shifting, a sense of conservatism isn't necessarily a bad thing when things change that quickly. Right. What we're seeing now come November, December is things are starting to pick up again. And the volume of flips hasn't really fluctuated a lot, but we are seeing people that really weren't experienced pull out of the market because it's not easy. And they're not able to just do the bare minimum and pick off the highest comp that they could find and say the house is going to be worth that. I don't have to do much, and people are going to fall all over themselves. That is gone.
Yeah,
that is gone.
True.
So that's the biggest shift that I've seen in fix and flips. But that being said, again, it has started picking up a little bit, and those of us that are experienced are able to step in and do what we do and continue doing it and follow the fundamentals and just make sure it's
Key, fundamentals. So that was my question is, you said a lot of investors got caught. So how do you, as a fix and flipper, how do you not get caught?
Going back to the fundamentals, really,
What's that?
There's several mistakes that typically people ignore. There's big points that newbie fix and flippers ignore, which is really understanding how to comp a property and then baking in a sense of conservatism with that to say, hey, if this comes out a little bit lower, if I do a medium grade reno, or if I trick this out, what is the range? And if I really have to dial it back a little bit, because lenders are more conservative right now too, can I still make the numbers work at the lower range of what that range might be? And then also understanding what it really costs to do the renovation. Before, budgeting was just a cute word because you could not have to do much, maybe go a little bit over budget, and people would still fall all over themselves to get the property. And then lastly, this is a big thing that I see happen all the time with flippers, is they don't focus on their go-to-market strategy. It's just like, hey, this is done. I'm going to throw it in the MLS with the agent doing a picture in the bathroom, like that. You guys know what as soon as I do that, you know exactly what that is, and we should not know what that is, Marcus. So they do this, and then they're wondering, why isn't this place selling? Why is it not moving? And when the buyers are now holding their gun, when for so long they were just in such an untenable position, people are demanding a better quality product. And that is one of the bigger missing pieces with flips, is people don't have a strategy, a checklist, a process, a procedure, and rules, if you will, to follow to get it to market, get people really excited about that house, the price, the look, and get over there and make an offer. Because to answer your question as well, was what's happening with flips, there are still multiple offer scenarios.
Yeah. Sure.
That is happening still on houses that are priced well.
Priced well,
Yep, really appealing, and they've hit all these marks. So those are the flippers that you're seeing that they know what they're doing.
So I like this. We have something tangible to work with. How do you not get caught? Go to the fundamentals. Stick to the basics, right? And so first one is comping. So let's maybe talk about a little bit about comping. So should that, obviously, here at AZREIA, we always said that's one skill you must have personally. Right? Yes, you have your team, your agent, but you sign the check at the end of the day, so you should know the comping. So any thoughts around comping? Because if you're newer, you might just be relying on what your agent says, right? And
yes.
So any thoughts around the comping?
So many thoughts, Mike. All the thoughts.
Let it out.
It's okay to review the numbers that people have sent you, but never in the history of me ever buying my own properties, especially when I'm using other people's money, because I treat that like gold, would I ever rely on what someone else thinks that house is worth. I build relationships with people to bring me deals. That's how I'm able to get projects, essentially just through social media and wholesalers and people that, are a little bit unsure about the numbers. I'm happy to look at those for people, but you still have to think that someone's trying to sell you something, right? And so it's in their best interest to try to find those numbers. So a lot of wholesalers, and in their defense, it's not their job to know your numbers, but it is your job to know your numbers. So when they say carpet and paint, it's going to be cosmetic flip. I'm like, sweetheart, that's cute, but that's usually not the case. And even if you think that that would be enough to get this to market, it's typically not anymore, for sure. So understanding how to do that, again, I think that you can take those into consideration, and you might see some crossover between some of the numbers that they're sending and what you're pulling. But it's taking me a little bit longer to underwrite deals because things have shifted a little bit. But whether or not you're actually the one physically listing the property, you need to think like an agent and like an appraiser and have that skill set. So if that is one thing that you feel a little bit not as well versed about, if AZREIA teaches that, or going to a broker or someone, is just really understanding. And as a rehabber, I go through all the comps and look at fixtures, finishes, upgrades, homeowner upgrades that I'm never going to do as a rehabber, because sometimes that's what moves the needle to get people to buy, versus, okay, this was a really done flip and I can compare mine to that. That's a great comp. If I execute with a similar fashion, I should be able to get that price all day long. But you have to be able to tease all of that out.
It's a lot. Yeah, you got to get the reps in. You got to just keep comping property. That's what we always say, just comp as many properties as you can so you get the hang of it and get feedback from others.
I actually kind of like it. Like, it's fun for me. I love to do research, so I don't know. I just kind of nerd out on that stuff.
And sometimes even when I do it, I may go overboard and look a little bit too long, almost to that analysis paralysis stage.
Yeah.
But like you said, you're looking at the fixes, the finishes, everything like that, because you want to know why this property sold for X amount of dollars more than the neighbors or something like that. So,
and let me drop a hot tip for y'all. This will be a tweetable if we're doing those. Right now, you absolutely have to look in the MLS to see if there's concessions and if they're doing buy downs for rates. Because I looked at a property yesterday that the numbers still work, but 4 out of the 5 comps I picked had seller concessions of $6,400 to $15,000.
Wow.
So when you look at the gross sales price, that you'd think, okay, well, this is my range, and it did show a clear range. However, when you really dive into the net, and they're also offering buyers agents bonuses as well. So if you think, oh, I'm going to get away with paying 2.5, 2.75, they're paying 3% plus like $5,000 if you bring an offer within a certain time frame or if it's full price. So you have to net that out, and that changes your price per square footage. And then looking at
that is a pro tip.
Yeah,
that is
because like before we go into the renovations. You're looking at all the finishes and everything. No, but you're looking at how is it purchased, conventional, FHA, cash. What kind of buyers are in this neighborhood?
100%.
So that whole public remarks or private remark sheet from your agent, where you can get all this information. It's important.
And how long is that on the market?
Days on market. Yeah, that's all part of the analysis.
And the holding costs, I'm telling everyone to comp it 6 months. If you get in, like my average is 4 months, but I'm still underwriting at 6 months because if everything else on the market is sitting there for 60 days, I love to think that mine's going to fly off the shelf. I put out a great product, but I don't want to have to make my numbers work as if I am depending on that.
Right.
You can't right now.
Always have that buffer.
Very true. Very true.
I like that. So let's go into cost of renovations and running your numbers. So we did comping. Marcus, any specific questions?
Cost of renovations. Have you seen renovation costs go down or go up? Because I know last year and the year before it was always, the cost of lumber went up, but now we're starting to hear that it's starting to drop some. So is that what you're seeing?
Lumber went down a bit, but I'm seeing some things stay about the same. I'm seeing some stuff come down a little bit, but I haven't really seen outside of lumber things change dramatically. So I haven't changed my numbers a lot, to be honest, but this is why I'm always talking. I always want to have like 2 or 3 trades, so you're always getting an idea of who's pricing where, and you're going to get a range. Some guys are going to cost a lot more just because maybe they typically work on $1 million houses and they don't want to work on your piddly $250,000 flip, and so they're trying to price you out of getting the job. Keeping a range on that, but we all have variances in what we pay for labor, so it's really important as a rehabber that you understand how to find good contractors, keeping a pulse on what your material costs are. So even on your first flip, if you can take an Excel spreadsheet of, hey, this is what cost me, and then you can compare it over time as well.
Are you seeing more opportunities with labor? So are you seeing more contractors now calling you saying, hey, you got anything to work on?
I have. So some of my guys won't, I shouldn't say work, but they specialize in certain areas of the valley. So, if I have projects going on one side, then I don't need those guys. And I have gotten some of them that have called to say, hey, do you have anything that we can work on? Because they've slowed up a little bit. Yep. But no one's just sitting idly by. Right. It just hasn't been as crazy as it was the last couple years. That being said, I haven't really noticed prices change much. It's just a matter of everyone's not as super slammed as they were.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a 2-part question. So one, how do you know, if you're new and you're starting, like how do you even know how to get this budget? You know what I mean? How do you gather the numbers? Who helps you out? How do you even figure it out?
So I have made it really, really simple. I have a free spreadsheet on my website, royceofrealestate.com, and they can download it. And it's like, if I was brand new and didn't understand, the cost of all the different subcontractors that you'd have to hire and the material costs, it kind of batches it in with a range of price per square footage, depending on what your output's going to be. And by that, I mean rent ready or mid-grade, or we're having to move walls and update systems. So it just gives you a really broad range. But one of the things that I like to teach is also, hey, this is why you become comfortable talking to contractors and getting bids, line itemized bids, not lump sum. Hey, I'll renovate this house for $30,000 or whatever it is. Like, you have to understand the line items so that way you become more efficient at looking at bids and understanding like, hey, you're way overcharging me for this, but this seems fair. So I know that's a really broad-based answer, but I think
it makes sense.
It's one of those things like if you plan to do this professionally, you need to understand how to get bids, talk to contractors, review line items, and then also kind of keep track of your material costs. That being said, after you've done a handful of properties, you get a lot more.
It's easy.
Yeah, you get a lot more comfortable with saying, I can walk in here in 10 minutes and know this is going to take about 40 grand.
Yeah.
It's not going to be every single time. And people ask like, hey, what software do you use? I'm like, when you say software, you can. I mean, listen, if whatever makes your business better, I'm all for. But it's really like the first handful of properties that you do that's going to really shorten the learning curve to get you there.
Okay. Is there what was I going to say around that? Oh yeah, is that like a red flag if a contractor's like, hey, 50 grand done, no line items, or 50% down? What are some like red flags you look for when working with a new contractor?
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say it's a red flag, but it's not a green flag.
Got it.
And it also tends to like a big thing with me, especially because I didn't have a background in construction and I had to learn all of this, is communication. And I'm going to be on site asking some of those questions that might be, it feels awkward to me because I didn't know. I'm watching YouTube at night and looking at blogs to try to understand so I could ask better and more informed questions. But when I'm there having to say like, hey, what would this cost? Or what's the difference with doing it this way or that way? It helped me to understand. So when someone gives you a lump sum bid, you have no way of knowing. And what I have also found is if something changes dramatically with that, they're still typically going to say like, hey, there was this incidental thing and it still came up. So I think it's really important to say like, hey, this is our scope. Yes, once we open the wall, something else could come up, but just having a better and more in-depth understanding of what's actually happening. So I can go through and say, we're not doing this, we do need to do this. And then understanding there's going to be even a buffer with that.
Yeah, there's a lot there. All right, so what about outside of the line items and everything? What about the miscellaneous items? Because I had bought a property in Chandler and I had like an addition on that was an extra bedroom over the years. But once we got in there was no ducts. I didn't realize there was no duct. Even our contractor didn't notice.
Right.
So it was just, it was a rookie mistake, I guess. I can't believe I didn't see no ducts in the room. But then it's like, hey, the current air conditioner isn't strong enough to feed the whole house.
Oh, man.
So we had to upgrade the tons on the AC, which was a whole unexpected cost.
Yep. Oh, man.
So how do you avoid that, and what do you put in as a buffer for these crazy situations?
So working backwards, I always ask the age of the AC, water heater, are the windows new, roofing, because going back to what we were talking about before, buyers are essentially demanding a better product at this point, or if you don't have those, pricing it accordingly. So knowing that up front, and then I usually put about a 10% buffer for things are going to pop up, whether it's like, oh crap, there's no ducts in here, or the finish work just is one thing after the other, which, it's like, even as like, I have a very detailed spreadsheet, but even then, the more you're on a job site, stuff pops up and you're going to notice it. And then the difficult part about it is, and this is what always gets me when people say, oh, it's just carpet and paint. I'm like, have you ever renovated a property?
Yeah, I can't even.
I think carpet and paint fixes everything.
Right. Once you start one thing and then everything else looks gross after that. And so you have to start following that down. So usually a 10% buffer is healthy enough, but that's also going in with a really detailed process procedure of like going room by room. And if you can, especially if you're new, I would never advise someone to do this themselves. Go with a GC, meet a few guys over there, walk it with a fine tooth comb, because they're gonna come up with stuff that you didn't even know to look for, right?
Oh, yeah.
So that is a big buffer, but things still get missed. I mean, nothing's ever 100% perfect. So you can hedge your bets better by being more detailed, finding out about the major systems up front, and then giving yourself that 10% buffer.
Perfect.
Yeah, because when you're, especially in our world, it's like you just get a walkthrough. There's no 10-day inspection period.
Oh, yeah.
Hiring a home inspector.
Oh, you're lucky if you get a walkthrough sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
right.
You got to be on it. Got to get that spreadsheet.
Tracy, is there any other red flags that you would tell people to be aware of?
I have had experience with guys that are like, I'm available now, or I can be there at 5 o'clock in the morning. That sense of it just kind of sniffs of desperation a little bit. And then also I'm like, if you're really available at 5 o'clock tomorrow morning, what else do you not have going on that now all of a sudden I'm going to be the target of?
Top priority.
Yeah. So it's different if you've worked with people for a long time and you're like, hey man, I got finished work coming up. Can you squeeze me in? Completely different. I'm talking about when you're looking for new subs and someone doesn't have references. Like I was calling for some new Finnish guys the other day on a different project that's nowhere near my normal projects. And one guy had told me, I do have references, but I don't want to give out my customer information, especially to other contractors. Right. And he didn't have a website. Handyman, just for reference, for those of you listening, typically don't have to have a contractor's license. If they're doing usually under $1,000 worth of work, they don't have to be licensed, but you take a chance, right? You either pay a premium if someone's licensed, bonded, and insured, or you can find unlicensed Finnish people, but you have to do your own due diligence for whatever is available. Sure. So he didn't, and I was seeing if he wanted to send me pictures, seeing what he would say, didn't do that, didn't have references, was available first thing tomorrow morning. And I'm like, I don't have time for that.
Yeah.
Just shake the tree, find someone else. So all of that is to say, especially ladies, if you don't feel right about a person, that is a no. I need to feel comfortable and feel like I'm 100% okay with this because I'm typically going to be on site with these guys by myself. And especially when there's money involved, we need to make sure up front we know how that's going to get taken care of. We have great communication. Do I get a good vibe off of this person as well? As unofficial as that sounds, after I've gone through the rest of my due diligence, I'm like, do I feel like I could be in a house by myself with this person? So that's my litmus, and I don't break those rules anymore. Even if I have to wait a couple days or pay a little bit more of a premium, cheap is not always the best. And someone that's like, I'm available right now, that's not a good sign typically either.
And that's a little bit different because you touch on a point that most men don't have to think about, because as a woman, you're going to meet these contractors late at night. You're going to meet them early in the morning. You may be the only person there with this person. And if you don't know him and you get that eerie vibe, you just never know. So that's very key what you just touched on, that we as men, we don't even consider.
Probably never crosses your mind.
Right.
And it has never been an issue. I mean, there's been a few times where it got a little bit weird. But again, it's before I understood how to do better due diligence. And I don't want to say I attracted these people, but you just don't know what you don't know. And so you're like, oh, okay, that sounds good, I guess, even though my intuition was like, do not hire this person. And I went against my better judgment. So that is a hard and fast rule if you're listening. If you don't feel good about this person, it is a hard no. But once I started following my own rules and finding great guys that charge fair pricing, they know exactly when I'm going to pay them. They know how I operate. I show up with a different energy. It's not a, BS time. It's like, hey, let's get this done. But we also have fun. Construction's hard.
Right.
These guys want to know that they can get their work done and also have good leadership and when they're going to get paid and exactly what needs to be done and not have to show up guessing. You don't have fixtures there for them. They don't have a clear scope of work. They don't know when they're getting paid. That's typically what causes a lot of issues. So I've made it not an issue by doing these other things that help tremendously. So, I mean, when I first got started, I had some of those issues, but I learned very quickly.
Through learning.
And put those rules in place, and it hasn't been an issue since.
Have you ever walked into your job site in the morning and one of the contractors was sleeping there?
No.
Oh, right.
that happened to you, Mike?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I've had all sorts of things happen, but typically it's like when you're going through sellers' houses and you see everything.
Yeah, everything. All right, so what do you think will change about flipping here in the next, 6 to 12 months?
Man, if I had a crystal ball, we'd all be a lot richer, right?
Kind of got one right.
Oh, yeah, the
somewhat.
crystal AZREIA ball, totally. I do think that for the period of time, and this is partially to do with the lending side of the operation, lenders are a lot more conservative. And so unless you are really well capitalized, and those usually aren't the type of people that are brand new to fix and flipping, it's going to cull the people that maybe had a little bit of money, a lot of desire, and no experience to just go out and buy properties and get floated because of what the market is doing. I see more experienced buyers like, ourselves being able to follow processes and procedures, systems, go through the comps like we talked about, put out a great product, but also again, bake in a sense of conservatism for what we're doing, because I'm having to build in bigger margins now too.
Yeah.
Whereas before, how it goes with seller's market versus a balanced or buyer's market is, hey, it's really difficult to get good projects, but it's super easy to sell them.
Right.
Whereas when you flip-flop that equation, it's like, hey, it might be a little bit easier to get discounts on properties right now, but you're going to have, and I use this term loosely, a harder time, meaning there aren't 10 buyers sending you an overlist price contract the first day you go to market. It's like normal, if I can use that word.
Yeah.
So that's going to freak a lot of people out, because you actually have to have an approach that has systems, processes, procedures, professionalism, like your numbers, your fundamentals all baked in. And I know I sound like a broken record, but for the last decade, and especially the last few years, all of that went out the window.
Yeah.
I mean, if you could get funding, you could get a project and you could just take it to market. You were making a profit. And now the lenders have backed off of, what they're willing to lend at. Even private money lenders typically are a little bit more conservative. So I just think it's going to highlight the people that are professional to be able to keep doing what we're doing, because in front of some of the AZREIA classes that we've been doing in last month's meeting, I said, tell me if you think that buyers are less particular now. And, who thinks that? And no one raised their hand, because affordability has not changed. We thought that prices were going to drop, but something has to give. Either interest rates have to go down, prices have to go down, something has to happen. And we've seen demand come back up because sellers are starting to be okay with, I guess, the 6% stuff is sticking around for mortgage rates, but those prices haven't really dropped. And wages haven't gone up tremendously. So buyers are very particular about, hey, I'm willing to pay a premium, but this house has to be move-in ready.
Perfect.
I have to be emotional about when I see this house, like this is my home and I'm willing to pay for it. So we as flippers have to think of, if I were a buyer in this area, what's going to get people really excited and the value of my property. New windows, the AC's newer, the roof is new. You're not going to have to spend $15,000 once you move into this property because I put in, white shaker cabinets and quartz countertops and greige on the walls. And then come to find out a year later, there's $15,000 worth of work that needs to be done on the major systems. People do not have that sort of float anymore.
So let's go into that. So you're kind of going into your go-to-market strategy. So let's hit some points on that. So what's that mean?
Right. So making sure all your finish work is done when you're doing a final walkthrough with your finish guys. I'm blue taping everything. It's not done until all the blue tape is removed and okayed. Also, the professional pictures, like we talked about, I want to reach through the screen when I see people like do the agent, the agent cha-cha, we'll call it. We're going to coin that, the agent cha-cha, where it's like, man, you just spent $50,000 on this rehab. You're really going to let the sucker come through here and do that with their phones? Like, spend a couple $100. It's one of the highest ROI things that you can do. But also the wording in your listing and what are you really highlighting, and making sure that that the agents know exactly how much they're going to get paid if they bring you, if they bring you an offer sooner rather than later. And all these things, it's like, is it getting syndicated? If I walk into the front door, even though it might look good online, like, is the garage always broom swept? Does the house look good? Because I've been to flips where it looks great. And I'm like, why isn't this selling? You walk into it and there's an odor and things don't look very polished. It's like, it looks like they just kind of wrapped up, took pictures and left. And people just get the ick about that.
I like that because sometimes you see some really great pictures and you get in the house, you're like, oh, it kind of lets you down a little bit. If it's not kept up and clean, for a lot of the showings, a lot of realtors, you see footprints walking through interesting.
Or staging.
What do you think about staging?
I think it's great.
You doing that now?
Yeah. Oh, I've always done it. A lot of this stuff I've always done, and it's the same thing I teach in flip school. Like, it's amazing that again, all these things just went out the window the last few years because you really didn't have to.
Yeah.
But I'm just like, I don't want to leave a trail of crappy houses around Phoenix. Like, so I put pride in my product, but I also found cost-effective ways to be able to do this. If you're so inclined, there's things like virtual staging. I mean, some of the institutional buyers do that, where they're putting these really modern designer looking furniture staging or virtual staging.
Right.
And then you look at the kitchen, you're like, bro, really? Like it's from 1970 and they're, virtually throwing lipstick on a pig here. But, if you're so inclined, you can do virtual staging. I prefer the live staging. I just think it's a little bit more textile of an experience when people go there. Most people are not good at visualizing space even when they're in it. Like you can look at a 2D picture and say, hey, that looks great. It's stylish. But when I'm there, I don't know quite how my living room furniture is going to fit here. So if you're on it, we're all on a budget. So one of the things I like to do with that budget is create vignettes in the most important areas. So living room, dining, and master.
What's that?
A vignette's just like a little setup of like a
You knew?
highlighting a certain area.
Yeah,
Marcus
sorry.
knows what's up.
Sorry. Okay. I
Yeah.
learned something.
Yeah. So, you don't have to deck out the whole house, but creating in the most important areas where people spend their time or they might have a hard time visualizing their furniture or how they're going to live, utilizing those areas for your staging.
So we got pictures, staging, quality product. What else?
Well, basically, you want to take the guessing game out of the hands of the buyer. So when that buyer turn that key and walk into that door, like you said, they feel like this is home. They don't want to guess, will my kitchen table fit in here, or how will the play space be for the kids? You want to take all of that guessing game away. That way, their whole aim and their whole focus is, how can we submit an offer and get this product?
Another thing, thank you for bringing that up, taking it out of the hands of the buyer. I also try to take it out of the hands of the agent, because even though we're paying what I think is hard-earned equity, and it's arguable if the agent should have say to that premium, is I don't know if that person just got their license last week or if this is going to be the smoothest, best transaction I've ever done with them. I've had both. One more than the other, and I won't say which. But I even, after pictures are taken, of course, have placards that say, hey, in the kitchen, here's the material for the countertops, here's the backsplash material, here's the cabinets, their soft close, all the things. So when you're walking through, the agent can point some of this out. But if they're showing 10 houses that day, I don't expect them to memorize.
Right.
And especially as a rehabber, I'm super detail oriented, but they might, it's white cabinets, it's quartz, it's this, it's that, and glaze over. Like, no, there's a lot of detail here that went into this that add a lot of value. And some of the either space efficiency or little details that they might even not notice unless they interact with it. Like soft close drawers, for instance, is a really topical example. So those sort of things I like to put in the areas in a really tasteful way. So when people are walking through, they can see, this has dual valves for the shower, and it has these features and finishes. And also providing them with a sheet at the end that has an outlay of that, not the listing, because the listing font is like half
So
the
small.
like half the size, but something that I want to create an experience for people when they walk through the house, but also where can they see the value? That is so important now with the major systems, because again, affordability has not gone down. So people are like, what's the age of the AC, water heater, roofing? Are the windows new? Is there any energy efficiency? Did you have upgraded insulation? And if you're hitting on those and it looks great, people are stoked. That's when you get an excited buyer that's just like, this is it. Honey, stop the car. Let's put in a contract on this. We've seen 10, but this is the one. What do we have to do?
It's funny because I was in a house on this past weekend, and it was a rehab, and the flipper itemized everything that they did in the house and the cost it was to do it. So like each bathroom, it was like $4,500. They put in this, they put in that. So they were really aimed on selling this property. So I thought it was really, really neat to see them do that.
Yeah. And even I think as a pro tip, I don't know, I would never put my prices. I would put prices of if you as a homeowner walked in somewhere in retail and had paid a designer and paid retail for this, what would you have paid? So they paid $4,500. A homeowner might have paid $5 to $6. Yeah, if not more than that. I mean, even doing a bathroom remodel for $5 is still really cost efficient. So I would put retail value.
I like that.
Yeah.
Cool.
So that way they'll see the savings that they're getting, and that the property is completely new.
People don't want to mess with that. I mean, DIY had a moment because we're all stuck at home, and if you're not a weirdo like us that likes rehabbing, then people are like, I'll do something, in my house and it feels good, which they should. But people, I think especially, I keep saying this because there's going to be a theme for it. is the affordability and having to deal with contractors. A lot of homeowners just don't want to deal with that. So it's like your job as a professional, put it all together, buy it at a price that you can afford to do all these things for the homeowners. And that's when people will pay a premium, because they're like, listen, we could buy a fixer upper, but what if we just bought this and got on with our lives?
Wow.
True.
A lot there. So we hit don't get caught, know your comps, know your renovation numbers, and go to market strategy. There's a lot more I know you have.
That's why they need to come to Flip School, because this is in a 30-minute conversation.
Exactly.
They're going to learn, they're going to take information from a fire hose for 8 weeks. I have 9 modules and 8 weeks of this sort of detail, and they have lifetime access, and they also get all my scripts, breakdowns, procedures, and they can jump on a call once a week with their fellow Flip School members as well. But this is the stuff that is a skill set that will parallel into almost anything. Like if you can understand renovation costs, some of you guys listening might decide, oh, this sounds all well and good, Tracy, but I think I don't actually want to be a flipper. I think I was really attracted to redesigning something.
Right, design.
But once I've dealt with contractors before, I decide I don't want to do this. But if you get into any sort of real estate investing whatsoever, unless you're just buying REITs or something where it's as passive as possible, having this sort of skill set translates into almost anything else. Pulling comps, understanding renovation costs.
Even if you're a landlord.
Yep.
100%.
So before we go more into Flip School, but if they want to get to know you better, one, we have I don't even know what episode it was. It was like one of our first 10 episodes or so.
Yeah.
You could always get to know Tracy on the earlier podcast. You got this podcast, but if you want to get to know her better in person, let's talk about 2 weeks from now. So we're spending the whole week with Tracy here at AZREIA. You guys want to start wrapping up? It's been like 40 minutes.
Yeah.
So let's do that. So Home Depot called and said they wanted to be part of some type of fix and flip project. And they're like, what can we teach? What can we help with? How can we support the fix and flippers in Arizona? And so we came up with Fix and Flip February. So we're like, so who could represent us on that?
I am so excited for Fix and Flip
Say your
February.
name. Did I say your name?
Oh, wait.
No, just kidding.
This would be a horrible time to.
Our guy named Brian, I was like, Tracy Royce, go to. That's who we're going to get.
Oh,
so
thanks.
he's like, all right, call her. Let's make it happen. So Home Depot is actually going to sponsor Fix and Flip February in the whole week of February 13th. So February 13th at the Phoenix monthly meeting at venue 8600, obviously we'll do our market update. We'll do our trade show, networking. However, our education piece is going to be Tracy. So you want to let us know what they will be learning the night of February 13th.
So what's really cool, I know we talked a lot about the fundamentals and actually got into some nitty gritty today. I want to introduce a little bit of a different and better way to look at flips that I think a large majority of people that wanted to get into fix and flipping, and even a lot of people that do fixing and flipping, gloss over, glaze over, forget. And it's so different that it can be life-changing.
Okay.
All right.
But people think of flipping a certain way, and I want to introduce a different way. So on top of all these fundamentals, I want to take a broader view of how they can think, how can I do this a little bit easier and better and use it to change my life as well?
Okay.
So that's what I'll be talking about at our February Phoenix and Tucson meetings.
Got it.
Wow.
So yeah, because that's one thing when you go to an AZREIA event, they got to get the education, right? So you're going to serve them with some great education. Where Home Depot's going to be giving away some gift bags, a bunch of swag. They're sending us, I don't know, a year's worth of Home Depot swag is in a truck right now on the way to the office.
Oh, wow.
So we'll have a lot of giveaways there. I know Hilton Financial's going to give away a $250 gift card to Home Depot. Net Worth Realty is sponsoring the whole weekend. So we're going to go and do the same thing February 14th on Valentine's Day in Tucson. Anything different there? Same thing. Same thing. Same education for our Tucson chapter. And then what we do on the 13th and 14th, we will invite everyone to a drill down, which is here at the Central Phoenix office. And I don't have the exact topic yet, but Home Depot is going to do a presentation for our Fix and Flip members, or all members, obviously. So we'll have 13th, 14th, 15th. All right.
Y'all going to be sick of me. Sick of me.
And it was great. Tracy is at the meeting the whole time. She networks, she talks to you, and I'm assuming even after your presentation, you'll stick around for a little bit and answer questions.
Certainly. Yep.
So then what we're doing on those 3 days is inviting everyone to our Fix and Flip bus tour Saturday, February 18th. You want to dive into that a little bit?
So I am excited about this because I have never done anything like this before. We're having people out at projects, and we're thinking 50 to 70 people almost.
Yeah, we're already at 30 and we still got a few more weeks to go.
Yeah, we really haven't done a lot of advertising for it. So we're going to have everyone out at projects, different grades of projects, have everyone on a bus. It's going to be a ton of fun. I'm actually pretty goofy sometimes. So I think they'll see both sides of that, like the project manager, Tracy, and then like, let's have fun and make this a good time as well. So for those of you that in Arizona, this is really cool because oftentimes with fixing and flipping, it's like, hey, we don't get experience on projects. We just can learn from books or podcasts or videos. And it's so cool that AZREIA and Home Depot, like I'm humbled by the invitation to do this. So it's going to be cool for those of you that are able to attend so you can actually get some boots on the ground experience because like you were saying, hey, let's comp until your mind just gets more relaxed with it. Like, okay, I know how to do this because I've done it so much as practice. It's kind of the same thing, I think, even in flip school where I'm teaching people, hey, we're going to go through the reps in a safe space. So that way when this happens in real time, you're not like freaked out by how this is actually going to go down. So it's similar with the bus tour. It's going to be a full day of just education and having fun and drinking out of a fire hose, but it's going to be a great time.
It is, and we're going to provide lunch. So it's 8 o'clock, come to the office. We'll be checked in on the bus by 9, see about 4 to 5 houses, come back. Lunch will be here by Net Worth Realty, and then the last half of the day, what are we going to do after we see all the houses?
The last half of the day, we're coming back to the lab. So coming back to AZREIA, and we're looking at, okay, now that we've walked these properties, let's look at the comparables to go through fixtures, finishes, what did they do to get to that comp? Were there concessions? How much are they paying the agents? What's the days on market? And extracting all of that qualifying data to quantify, this is the price that we would need to pay. This is about what we think our budget's going to be. What would your offer be to try to get this flip under contract if you were to pick this flip up? So we're dialing it backwards, again, as if this was in real time, but in a safe setting to go through this with a group of like-minded people and an experienced person to say, hey, this is the roadblocks you need, or this is the things you really need to look for, and here's steering you in the right direction. So you're more comfortable doing that on your own.
Yep.
Can't beat it.
That's good to get those reps. You know, that repetition is key, like we said about the comps. More comps you do, the more comfortable you become at doing it. So you guys make sure you're here that entire week. Trust me, that entire week is going to be power-packed with a lot of information. So we want to see you here. Actually, we want you to beat us here because Tracy got a lot of information she's going to be providing for you guys.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that wraps it up.
It's a wrap. Thank you so much,
Thank
Tracy.
you so much, you guys.
Yeah,
I'm
thanks for
looking
being
forward
here.
to it. Fix and Flip February. Let's go.
There you go.
Thanks for listening to the AZREIA Show with your hosts, Marcus Maloney and Mike Delprete. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you found this information valuable, head over to AZREIA.org and learn more about our community.